Which brings us to archetypes. One website listed 325 archetypes. Normally, there are about 20 that are used a lot. Later we will talk about the creator archetype and the everyman archetype. But just now I want to talk about my 7 favorites. You'll see 6 listed here. The ally, mentor, and love interest, and parents, antagonist, and jester. Now, one character can actually be multiple archetypes. So which one do you think of combining first? We often would think of parents as being the ally and the mentor. One character can be all 3. And usually the death of a parent as the mentor spurs the protagonist onto their journey and happens around the inciting incident. So a common trope is where the parent dies and the child has to go on their adventure and they're learning their lesson. And so this mentor parent figure might die at the inciting incident, the 50% point, or of course the all is lost. As I mentioned, many mentors give their lives for that one. But what are some other ways that we could combine these 6? What tropes could we actually create that you would recognize in a lot of stories? What about a parent figure being an antagonist? We immediately think of the wicked stepmother in Cinderella. Also, a weak father figure, as in Beauty and the Beast. The father does not protect the daughter ends up protecting the father. Now let's take the love interest. When we think of the love interest, we immediately think of an ally. But what trope do we get if we were to make the love interest our antagonist? Enemies to lovers. Now, could the love interest be the mentor? Absolutely. This is actually one of my favorite uses. Both love interests need to circle back to the theme. Now, often it appears that one of them has learned it, and it appears the other has to learn it in order for them to be together. So let's say that Jackie doesn't want to trust. She's been burned too many times. She'll never open herself up again. But Ted is trying to explain to her about trusting God and trusting him. Now, there's instant tension in the scene because we know that they can't be together unless Jackie accepts the theme. Now, just on a side note, that means that this book would be considered the romance genre. In a romance genre book, the characters learn the theme from their love story, and one or both have to learn the theme in order to be together. If they do not have to learn the theme in order to be together, and their romance is not pivotal to the theme of the book, it's not actually a romance. It would be considered an adventure story with romantic elements or a fantasy with romantic elements. In a romance, the theme and the love story are intertwined. I had read about one author who had spent 2 years advertising her romance, and then she found out 3 weeks before publishing date that it was not a romance. It just had romantic elements. And so in those last 3 weeks, she had to quick rewrite large portions of her book. Now, in a strong book, one option is you think one character really knows the theme and the other is the one who has to learn it. But at the plot twist, it shows that actually the other love interest doesn't know it. I use this in my King Thrushbird retelling on Pride. The heroine was a princess figure forced to marry a commoner, and he's actually a prince figure in disguise, but he's laid aside his nobility to live with the commoners, and he seems very humble. But at the plot twist, when he does have to take his proper position as ruler, it is him who is struggling with pride. He's always depended on himself and not God. And then there was some foreshadowing earlier, but it lifts its head, and it's his soul that's being fought for at the climax. And this is a great technique to use with two characters. Actually, whenever you have two characters, you automatically have a comparison going. If you stick two people in a scene or a story, your reader won't even realize it, but they will be comparing. And the scriptures uses this a lot. Saul versus David, Hannah versus Peninnah in 1 Samuel 1, the first Adam versus the second Adam. In Proverbs, the woman Folly versus Lady Wisdom. And throughout Scripture, the righteous versus the wicked. So, how do you use this in your writing? Let's say that you have a character and you want to show in their snapshot that they are quiet and shy. Just give them a popular and social sibling. What if you want to prove that they are brave? Give them a best friend who is terrified to stand up to the bully, and you have an automatic comparison. Now, another character that you want to use is the jester, and it does not have to be a human. This is Ty, my aunt's dog, and he was the model for Barnacle, a stinker of a dog, and my jester character in one of my books. So children, animals, teasing best friends, they all work great as jesters. But what is the purpose of the jester? Specifically, if something sad or upsetting happens, you actually need to lift the tension. And so you add in the jester character. You put on the tension and then you relieve the tension. So your character is running for their lives and someone just died and they're racing from the bad guy, and they look back, and the jester character who loves walnuts, they are flying out of his pockets as he runs. And then something sad, and they have to admit the lie, and then they look over, and he's got his mouth full of walnuts while he's nodding. He totally agrees with them. And so what you're doing is you apply this pressure, and then you relieve it